I decided to add another quilt to the countdown to Christmas series, I guess. And I'm gonna take you along with me. We're gonna make that one. Okay, so this is the Fat Quarter Mixer by Material Girl Quilts. So I will put that in my bio. You are gonna need, for the size that I'm making, you're gonna need 12 fat quarters. And you're gonna end up making it 24 blocks. If you don't want to use fat quarters, which a fat quarter, if you don't know, is an 18-inch by 22-inch piece of fabric. But basically what it works out to is you need 12 10.5 by 10.5 inch squares, 36 5.5 inch by 10.5 inch rectangles, and 24 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch squares. We are going to make 2 blocks. The first one is block A, which is this one right here. I'll show you block B in the next video. I feel like learning how to use your machine is half the battle. So if you can learn how to use your machine, you're good to go. After that, it's smooth sailing. Just kind of learning the lingo and, like, you know, what to do. So the first step for block A is you are literally just going to take one of those 10.5 inch squares and then one of those rectangles and sew them together, right sides together, for every single one of them until you run out of the 10.5 inch squares. All I'm doing is I'm just chain piecing here. Also, I totally realized you can hear my cat in the beginning of this video. We'll just ignore him. But yeah, I'm chain piecing, and then I will just snip those apart, like snip the little threads, and then I am pressing the seams. It really does not matter what direction you press the seams in, or like if you press them open. It does not matter, because none of your seams are going to be nesting, which is fantastic. But there you go. There's the first part. That is block A. Alright, now we're going to be making block B, which is in the picture right here. Super, super easy. It's going to be 2 of the 5.5 inch squares and 2 of the rectangles. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to take all of your squares and attach them together 2 at a time, right sides together. I'm over here yawning. It's like 7:15 in the morning. I have to get up soon and get my son ready for school, but I wanted to get this done. So I'm just gonna go through and get all of these squares attached. You want to do this in waves because you want to, it's a multi-step block. You kind of have to go at it in like a counterclockwise situation, or clockwise depending on how you situate the block. Now, I'm not really paying attention to like the colors I'm pairing together or the fabrics. I'm just grabbing them until I run out. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. Now I just am pressing all of the seams, and again, like I said last time, you don't have to press them any certain type of way. You can press them however you want to. You're not going to have to worry about nesting any seams. Just, you know, take the iron to them and call it a day. So now that that's done, you're going to take a rectangle and you're going to lay it over top, again, right sides together. You're going to lay it over top of those squares. Just line up the edges, and you're going to do that until you run out of those pairings of squares, if you will. After we're all done with that, we're on to the next phase, which is adding the very last rectangle to the block that you just created. Now this one, up until now, the directions have not mattered. You might be able to hear my cat in the background. He thinks it's breakfast time. Anyway, the directions really have not mattered up until this point, and they still really don't matter, I don't think. But the only thing is, you just want to pay attention to wherever you're sewing the rectangle on. You want to make sure that it's going to be the same for every single block that you do. So what I did was I turned the block so that the two little squares were at the top away from me, and that way I knew that the rectangle was going on the same side every single time. Guys, this quilt worked up so quick and easy for me. I'm going to try to put the actual, like, attach them all together today so we can have a full quilt top. I don't know if it's going to happen because I do have a Christmas parade that I'm doing tonight for work, but I don't know, we'll see. But like, actually putting all of these pieces together took maybe 30 minutes. I just did it while I was waiting, like in between cooking dinner, like just while I was waiting for things in the oven. So there we go. There are all of the blocks done. Now in the next part we will attach them all. I have been putting my sewing machine to work, let me tell you. I got this whole quilt top put together all today. Guys, my sweet husband, look at him. He came in and he helped me figure out the placement of all these blocks. Unfortunately, he sat in front of my phone, but whatever. This is what we decided on. Normally, I really wouldn't care about the orientation of the blocks or like the layout, I guess. But I didn't really want any of the fabric to be touching fabric of the same kind, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want patterns touching each other. So, unfortunately, the chaotic quilt needed to be a little controlled. But right here, I'm sewing all of the blocks together. I am so excited. Here's some real-time action for you. I believe, yep, I see a clip. So this is when I was sewing all of the rows together. All of the big long rows. I should have showed you a picture of that, or like filmed that in between part, but I didn't. You saw me just take a clip off of the seam. So this is where nesting the seams is going to be important. And I will show you in a clip coming up how you can nest the seams. It's not a very good clip. I honestly don't know how to show you, but right here, you can kind of feel it. You can feel when the seams are like perfectly nested. There's not a huge valley in between the two. I don't know how else to explain it, but I just line them up, make sure they're nesting good, they're facing different directions, and then I put a clip on there and call it a day. This is going to be a very short video, but oh my lord, this quilt top is put together. Look at that beautiful thing. I think I spent less than 24 hours on this, just total. That's incredible. I absolutely love it. Look at that. Beautiful. I'm proud of this one. Definitely proud of this one. Go me. It is time to get this thing quilted. So right here I am just basting all of my layers together, which basically means that I am attaching them all together by means of either glue or pins, just a temporary way to attach all of my layers, which is my quilt top, my batting, and my backing. And in this particular one, I used a bed sheet for the backing, some blizzard fleece for the batting, and then of course the quilt top. You just saw my son, the smiley face heart eye emoji thing. He's so great. He is 6 years old and he loves to help me with my sewing projects. He is typically my foot pedal operator. But sometimes he will get bored of that and he will be the one that raises and lowers my presser foot. Sometimes he will hold my spool holder because he thinks it needs to be more stable. Just whatever he thinks needs to be done,
I'm willing to let him do it because it makes him feel like he is a part of it, and it makes him feel so important. It can be the smallest job, and he is just over the moon about it, and I absolutely love it. Eventually he ditched me because he thought that, you know, playing with his toys was a lot more fun, but he helped me for a good few hours, so that was a lot of fun. We are having some issues with this quilt. I will talk about them in the next clip, but it definitely gave me a run for my money. I totally just took a picture instead of starting this video. I'm a professional, guys. I am absolutely a professional. So I just wanted to show you, this is what I'm dealing with. So on the front, it's this one right here. On the front, it looks great. But on the back, it does not look great. And I feel like it started to do it right here too. And then it also did it over here, which is one of the last rows that I did. So I'm thinking that this is the product of an improperly wound bobbin. I think that the bobbin is wound too loose at the end of it. So let's grab it and see. So when you squish a bobbin, it should like be nice and like you shouldn't be able to squish it. And honestly, this one's kind of like, it's kind of getting low, so I can't really tell, but I'm just gonna not use that, and I'm gonna put a new one in and just kind of see how that goes. And if that one doesn't work, then I'll just wind a new one. Alright, I cut myself off there, but that did work. Replacing the bobbin and just like messing with my tension, that did help a lot. So let's talk about what is quilting. Quilting is, like, the word quilting is actually not assembling the whole quilt. The actual quilting part is stitching all of the layers together. So all three layers, you've got your quilt top, your batting, your backing. And the reason that this is a thing is because back in the old days, I'm not sure when, maybe I'll do a history video at some point, we'll learn some things together, but back in the old days, they used a looser style batting, and that the quilting was meant to keep all of the layers together and keep things in place, and from shifting around inside of the quilt. So you learn something new every day. But I love this quilt. In the next part, we will learn how to bind it. It looks beautiful. I will insert a clip of like a close-up of what the quilting looks like, but it looks fantastic. It is not perfect by any means. The lines are not straight, they are not even, but honestly, that was the intention, and I absolutely love it. It is, I'm not a fan of very tight quilting because I feel like it makes the quilts very, very stiff and like not as cuddly. So just having the variation in these like slices here, I suppose, I think really, really helps the like softness and like cuddleability of the quilt. But yeah, in the next part, I will show you guys how to bind a quilt. That'll be really exciting. Guess what? It's time to do the binding. Is I'm gonna do 60 times 4 because that gives me the inches around all four sides. Typically, edge to edge, selvage to selvage with the fabric is anywhere between 40 to 44 inches. Just to be conservative, I'm gonna say 40 inches. So I'm gonna divide that by 40. That tells me that we need 6 strips. 6 2.5 inch wide width of fabric strips. I'm gonna go ahead and actually cut 7 or 8 depending on how much my fabric allows me to do, because I want to make sure that I have extra. After we square up the edges, we actually need to make the binding. So I cut, I think 7 or 8 2.5 inch wide width of fabric strips, and now we are just attaching them all together. You can do this a couple different ways. You can either just do it edge to edge and just make a really long strip,
or you can do what I did and do like a diagonal and attach them that way. I prefer that way because it definitely allows me to not have as many as many bulky seams. It really cuts down on the bulk. So right here I'm just showing you what I did. You just put the two fabrics right sides together, draw a line from corner to corner, and then you just sew along that line. And then after that, you just want to cut off the excess. You are going to have some dog ears, but you don't really need to worry about that. Just make sure you leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once everything is sewn together, you want to just fold that entire strip in half and press it down so it stays.
Alright, to get started on this binding, I have already pressed it in half. And I don't know, I'm about like halfway down from the corner of the quilt on one of the sides. It doesn't really matter. And I'm leaving a good tail before I start sewing. What you want to do is, I typically start on the back of the quilt. It doesn't really matter what side you start on. It's really just personal preference. But what we're going to do is we are going to line up raw edge to raw edge. So you see that this side is the side that's folded. And then this side is the one that opens up right there. So we're just going to line up raw edge to raw edge and just sew all the way around. Once we get to the corner, I will show you what to do. But I'm just going to sew all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so as we get up to the corner, what you want to do is, I'm just going to make sure that this is all lined up correctly. All right, we're going to go all the way, or almost all the way. You're going to want to stop about 1/4 inch away from the edge, which I'm going to guess is probably one more stitch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise up my presser foot just a little bit. And then I'm just going to sew at a diagonal all the way across, or all the way off the quilt. And then I'm going to take that, cut the threads over here. So what we're going to do is we stopped and sewed all the way off at about a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull this all the way up. So it's at about a 45-degree angle with the corner. And then we're going to pull it back down. And this little fold here should be flush with the edge of the quilt. And then I am going to just finagle that a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and clip it. I'm going to put that on top while I open this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clip it because I don't want it to move around. Normally, I don't really clip the binding, but in the corners I do. All right, so now that those are clipped, what we're going to do is we're going to start about we're going to put this back in the sewing machine. We're going to start about a 1/4 inch away from the edge, which is going to be about right here. And then we're just going to make sure you backstitch to lock that into place. And then we're just going to go all the way down until we meet the next corner. So we've got our tail right here. This is where we started and this is where we're at. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stop right here just to make sure I've got plenty of room to work with. Okay, so now what we have to do, we've got about, I don't know, let's see, probably about 5 inches or so in between the two ends here, or the two tails, I should say. So what we're gonna do is first, we're gonna do a little trick. Okay, so I'm gonna cut a little piece off of this, and then I'm going to open it up. So this across here is 2.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this right here, lay this one on top, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark where the two like where the overlap is. So I'm going to go right here. Right here. So I drew those 2 lines, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this one right here. This is the top one. I'm going to cut this on this side, and then I'm going to cut this end off of this side. I'm going to put the scraps off to the side, and then what we do is this one gets opened up. Oh my goodness, okay. This one gets opened up just like this. And then this one gets opened up with the wrong side facing up. And we're going to have them lay just like this. Now, there are better tutorials, because honestly, I'm not great at them, but you're going to want to sew these together just like you did for when you were making all of the binding itself. So I'm going to go ahead and clip this in a couple of different spots here. Wowzers, that was so much more difficult than it needed to be. Anyway, what I ended up doing was I ended up getting the seam ripper out, and I opened up that space just to give me a little bit more room to work. But now, as you can see, it ends up being kind of a mess, like kind of like that. You just pull it and it'll go into place. It's pretty cool. So now what you need to do is you just need to get this in place where you left off on your seam there, or on your stitch line. And you're just going to want to finish this up until you meet back up at the beginning. This is the front of the quilt. We're just going to take this binding and we're just going to fold it over the front and just stitch it down. And you can kind of feel where that seam is on the back there. You want to try to get it as close to this little seam as possible. But if you don't, honestly, who cares? I don't care at all. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start about halfway down again just because I feel like it. And then once we get to a corner, I will show you how to deal with that.
I don't really know how to explain this part, so hopefully just the visual will help. But honestly, dealing with the corners is really easy, and if you do it this way, you'll end up with a perfectly mitered corner every time. Just pull the one side straight down and then fold the other side over top of that, pin it down so it doesn't move, or clip it. I think clipping it is easier. And then once you actually sew, make sure you do, I always like to do a couple back stitches right on the corner on the seam there where it folds over, just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Hi, kitty cat. And then you just turn and keep going. It's pretty simple.